Hey everyone, today I'm going to play just a bit of Radiant Historia. This is actually one of my favorite games, just period. And I recently got through playing Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology, which is a 3DS remake, well, kind of soft port of this game. It has extra content, some overall upgrades to presentation and stuff. But most notably, it has a new ending. And I just wanted to rant about that a bit because this game is so excellent and this new ending is so bad. So I'm going to start off a bit without spoilers and just talk about what makes this game great in the first place. And first and foremost, the writing's really good. The characters are all just really strong overall, especially the main character, Stock, the guy in red right there. And what's really cool is this game, I kind of compare it to Chrono Trigger, even though it's not really like that at all. Like, Chrono Trigger is a much lighter game and its strengths lie in different places than Radiant Historia, but Radiant Historia is a time travel game, but they use it very differently. The way this game works basically is there's tons of bad endings and there's two main timelines. But what's cool about this game is that both timelines are so good, they could probably just be their own game and just take out the time travel gimmick entirely and just sell them as two separate games. But they don't do that, and instead they have them work together and tie into each other, and they reveal things about each other, and it's so good. And then another way that this game is so strong is that the RPG gameplay, the turn-based combat, is really strong, really good. It has this cool twist on it, which I'll show you when I get to some actual combat. It's got everything that I want out of an RPG, basically, a strong story and cool, engaging combat. And honestly, a lot of the stuff in Perfect Chronology is like a straight up upgrade as far as I'm concerned. Like the voice acting they added, which is it's actually kind of weird how they do it. The major characters are voiced almost 100% of the time, but any minor character doesn't have any voice acting no matter what. But the voice acting is overall really strong, especially for Stock, but also for his friend Rosh, who I don't have with me right now at this point in the story. But both of them, yeah, they have very strong writing. Or not writing, sorry, the writing's already good, but the voice acting is good and supplements it really well. And like some characters are less strong, but there's no bad voice acting outside the minor characters with their really weird grunts. Okay, here's some combat. Another thing about the combat, actually, well, not related to combat, I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my words, but the music's done by Yoko Shimomura, which is one of my favorite composers too, so it's just a perfect game, really, just made for me. Anyways, something cool right off the bat. Up here, you can see the turn order. You can freely change your character's turn order in up to 10 turns in advance. So you can swap out your turns for your own party members, but also enemy turns, and stack a bunch of your own turns. The payoff is that, for example, you see here Stock has turned red, and that's called Baroque status. And while under that, you take more damage, and it's just you're overall more vulnerable. So it's a trade-off. And so yeah, you can also freely change. See, like I can switch my own party members around too, and you can get your characters wherever you want. So what you do is you build up turns, and then you can get a whole bunch of combos going. And the reason why I want to do that is you see enemies are all spread out here. And the reason for that is that they're actually on a 3x3 grid. So you can manipulate their position on the grid using a bunch of different kinds of attacks. I'm just going to heal up here so I don't die in the middle of explaining this. But for example, here I'll show my skills. Stock has just Power Wave, which is just high damage, but then you also have stuff like Push Assault here, which will push an enemy forward, and then you can push them to the right, left. And Stock is the only character who has a good set of full movement abilities. Other characters, they'll have more specific stuff that supplement Stock. Stock is basically, he can do basically everything in the game, but other characters are more specialized. So you're never, like, there's actually a lot of freedom with your party setup because of that. But like right now I have Rainey and Marco as my party members, and they're pretty vanilla as far as it goes. Like Marco can heal and Rainey has magic. And so another thing about that, in addition to moving your enemies around, and I'll set up a combo right with this. The thing is that when you use magic, for example, then that actually increases your combo rank, and the more combos you get, the higher your damage do, but you also get a money and EXP payout bonus. So, and also when enemies are stacked, all of your abilities stack on them too. So if I use Poison Break here on them, then and all the enemies were stacked, then all of them would have a chance to be poisoned. So it's way more cost effective. And the thing is, sometimes you have to kind of weigh it, because it does cost MP to move enemies around, but usually it costs more MP to take them out one by one, and you take more damage in the process, so you have to spend MP healing. So yeah, it makes every encounter a lot more engaging as far as I'm concerned. So like, oh yeah, another thing, with the 3 different rows there, enemies can be on, the front row, they take more damage but deal more damage. The back row, they take less damage, than the middle row is just middle. So your positioning matters in that way too. Like here I'm going to step a left assault with stock, but then I'm going to switch over to Marco and use one of his abilities that only one other character has an ability like this, which is a grapple, where you can bring an enemy forward. Most characters only have push assault, which pushes them back, which is good so that they don't do as much damage to you, but then you do less damage too. But by optimizing it like this, so I can use, for example, some magic now, and you'll see the combo goes up faster, and then I end it with a push assault, and I do lots of damage, but I also get the benefit of them doing less damage on their turn. So, Radiant Historia plays well and has a great story. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the new ending it's real bad. So basically, Atlus has this thing they do. People are just starting to notice it, but they've been doing it for a while, ever since Persona 3 Portable, I'd say, which is where they take an old game, add a bunch of stuff, and add a new girl. They're doing that with the upcoming Catherine remake, and they did it with Persona 4 with Persona 4 Golden, where they added Marie, who is also a really bad character who changes the ending in a really bad way. But as far as I'm concerned, Marie is good compared to what they did to Radiant Historia. So, where do I even start? Okay, so with the changes they made to Perfect Chronology, they added a new timeline, the possible histories, and these are actually pretty good. So you have is things like, what if this character, instead of going on the route they did in the main story, they became the general of the army of your hometown, that kind of thing. And then there'll be some sort of micro story involving them. And then when you resolve it, you get an artifact, which is what this new character, the new girl, wants. Her name is Nemesia. And a lot of these are pretty good. They're usually fun little what-if stories, and there's a subplot involving the Prophet Noah, who's a character who only gets a bit of screen time late in the game. Actually, I'm not going to even bother. Okay, from this point, full spoilers ahead. So in the main timeline, the Prophet Noah is dead. That's how it always was in this game, and then the new possible history stuff has a what-if scenario where he's still alive and how things would turn out there. And that's, kind of interesting. The whole point of this new stuff is they go a bit more into the history of the world, which, by the way, okay, the spelling of the world of this game is V-A-N-Q, Q-U-E-R? I think there's an I in there somewhere. It's weird spelling, but I always thought it was like Vancouver or Vancouver or something like Vane something, but it's actually pronounced, according to the voice acting, Vancouver, and I keep hearing that as Vancouver, being a Canadian, and it just really throws me off. But I digress. So, yeah, you learn more about Vancouver, and let's see, what else? I know there's some dumb stuff with it, like once you get through the story with the certain possible histories, you get these items that let you go and talk to the main villains of both storylines. There's Queen Protea and General Hugo, and if you give these items to them, that changes the endings. They're still written out of the story, but So the one with General Hugo is especially dumb. The one with Protea is not bad. Basically, you give her a memento from an alternate history where she's leading a resistance, and it's a memento that reminds her that she wanted to do good for the citizens of the kingdom she's the leader of. And then she's like, oh, this reminds me of that, and she goes off and then tries to make amends instead of just running off and that's it. The General Hugo one is really not great. So the whole point with him is that he used the name of Hugo to make the country become more and more militaristic and take control for himself. And, that's, a perfectly standard good arc. But then, if you give him the item from that, it turns out that in this timeline the whole time, Noah was actually alive. But not only that, he was off to the side of the place where you have the final battle and you just didn't notice. So if you just go over there where he's in suspended animation, then you can use the item and save him, and then now in that timeline, Noah survives and is alive, but he goes into hiding for some reason. So it's really bad because the whole point of it relies on Noah actually being dead and Hugo was manipulating people, and now it's, oh no, he was actually alive, he was just sick. And so that's why it happened. Like, they try and make it into this weird loyalty thing, and it's real dumb. But even that is pretty good compared to where they go at the ending. And to properly explain that, I'm going to explain how the true ending of the normal game works. So, right off the bat, Radiant Historia isn't a game of quick and easy fixes. By the end of the game, things aren't solved, they're on the way, like everyone's agreed to try their best to fix the problem. There's a temporary stop that's giving them some time to work it out, basically. So, Stock, as the wielder of the White Chronicle, which gives him time travel powers, he gains the ability to go through these different timelines, mix things up and stuff like that, but ultimately the purpose of this is for him to eventually sacrifice himself and die. And then this will allow the desertification, which is the world being slowly destroyed and turning into sand, it will be slowed down temporarily. And there's some lore about how this desertification is rooted in the old empire. And no one knows exactly how it came to be, but it did come to be, and now these people the remnants of the world have to deal with the problem, basically. So, wow, what am I thinking? Final Fantasy 15? Stock, he willingly sacrifices himself because he believes in friendship and all that, yada, yada, yada. And then if you get the perfect ending by doing certain side quests, you get a vision of all the different things that people do over the span of time to try and solve the problem. You have, like, the princess, who is one of your party members. She is working on restoring the kingdom. You have At, who's like a magic shaman person who's working on reversing the desertification and stuff like that. And it's a satisfying, kind of bittersweet ending, because you don't just sacrifice a person's life and the problem is solved. There's nuance to it. It's good. But I think I need to explain a bit more. So basically, Stock is able to, because he sacrifices himself, he's able to use his powers to create basically a really good future for his friends. Like, he brings back a character who you think is dead and stuff like that. And then the enemy of the game, who is Heiss, he has the Black Chronicle, and he's basically manipulating the whole thing because he wants to save Stock. He doesn't want him to die. But Stock, over his adventure, finds things worth living for, etc., etc. In the end, if you get the perfect ending, then Heiss decides to sacrifice himself in Stock's stead, and he sees a vision of the future that Stock wishes to create, and he says, like, not bad or something like that. So it's a really strong, good ending that shows, it gives a payoff to everything that you go on throughout the entire game. You play thoroughly, you get a really good, thorough ending. So the new ending, the perfect ending, I think that's what it's called, is... okay, so... basically, if you get all of the different artifacts at the end of the perfect ending, not the normal ending, then your guide characters will come up and say, what a good ending. What could be better than that? Well, maybe if you go and get all of the artifacts, then you can get an even better ending. And I had all the artifacts, I was playing thoroughly, I wanted to see what the new ending was. And so you go into Nemesia, and by using all the artifacts, you get to create a new history. And what this comes down to is you go back to just before Heiss makes his sacrifice, when you're talking to him in this world called Historia at the end of the game, and instead say, we need your help. And he agrees to help you to stop the desertification forever by using these artifacts. So, okay, so Heiss is not a good person. He has a good motivation. He cares about stock, and he doesn't think the world's worth saving because it's sustained by people dying and being sacrificed. But he's not a good person. The way he goes about doing it is objectively morally terrible. The reason, like, the things he does range from, like, he kills tons of people right off the bat. So, like, there's a side quest with Marco where he meets a girl he likes, and she's working as an agent for Heiss. And before she can reveal who it is, he turns her to sand. And so yeah, he's killed Marco's girlfriend. He also killed the bandit troop or mercenary troop or whatever that Marco and Rainey used to work for, and ensured that only they survived so that they could work for stock. I shouldn't just list everything, but basically he does a lot of bad stuff in the name of his beliefs. But then Stock just shows up after he leaves all his friends with a heartfelt speech and says, okay, so Heiss with me now, and I know you guys don't like him, but we need his help. And everyone's like, oh, I don't know, but sure, they just go along with it. And so you end up going to this new dungeon, which is technically the past versions of places you've been to, but they're the exact same maps. And you get some new items, and you get payoffs for doing all the optional relics and stuff like that, or not relics, whatever, you know what I mean. This is the point where it really just falls apart. This ending is so much worse, and it starts with Nemesia. So she's been a pretty inoffensive but not great character. A lot of bad writing comes into this thing where the character will just be one trait. Like, Persona games, especially in their spin-offs, run into this where, like, GA has stuff going on in Persona 4, but in the spin-offs, it's like, oh, I love meat, give me more meat, I'm so hungry because I'm not a traditional girl. But then, like, sometimes when you add, like, Marie is a character who is very one-note compared to the rest of the cast in Persona 4 Golden, and Nemesia is very much the same. Her whole shtick is teacher stuff. She'll say, like, oh, good job, you get an A+, or, oh, you get extra credit for that, or, oh, that's a good question, or something like that. Like, everything she says is teacher related because she's a professor type character. And so it's very one-dimensional in that regard, but whatever, she's just a character to get into these possible histories which are way better written. But then she ends up becoming the focal point of this. And so keep track of all this, okay? It turns out she's the wielder of the Red Chronicle, which is like the White and Black Chronicles. She's also the princess of the Ancient Empire, which it turns out was only destroyed 150 years prior to the game's events, which kind of makes the whole ancient stuff kind of unrealistic as far as I'm concerned. But whatever. So she's a princess, she's the wielder of the Red Chronicle, and the source of the desertification wasn't just some normal thing about, like, the Empire overstepped their bounds or something. It's actually her former lover. There was a engineer person who she fell in love with, and emperor or whatever, the king of the old empire, didn't like that, so he performed evil experiments on him and turned him into a giant monster that consumes the life essence of the world. So the real reason that there's desertification is because there's a giant monster that's eating the planet, basically. Not actually eating the planet, but turning the planet into sand. And you go and use her red chronicle and combine with your white and black chronicles to beat up the monster and prevent the desertification from continuing, making it so there's no need for sacrifices or anything like that, but also making it so that there's no work needed. You don't have to do any leg work at all because it's just solved. Like, the ending of the original game, it was always stuff like, okay, so we have what we need to work towards something better. For example, there's a side character called Viola, and she's ill. If you do her side quest, then in the ending, it'll say, thanks to this side quest you did, we now have information on your illness because you were keeping it a secret. And we've worked on something that will help slow the problem, and if you work hard, then you'll be able to survive. The perfect ending is just, oh, we found a perfect cure for this. And that's how all of the new ending stuff works. Stock and Heist are just surviving by default and just living in the world, and everyone's problems are just solved. Like, every single one, no matter what. Except, weirdly, the character they bring back, Keel, he survives in the perfect end, or the golden ending. The perfect ending doesn't even touch on that, so that's kind of weird. It's almost like they do actually just die in that version, which is kind of morbid. But just... So, Nemesia ends up becoming a very major case of a Mary Sue. Because in addition to being a princess, in addition to being the ruler of the Red Chronicle, she takes all of Stock's party members into Historia, which is a place where only Stock and Heist could go originally. And they all meet up with her, and they all immediately like her and talk about how great she is. And then when they get to the point where they're going to fight the monster that's destroying the world or whatever, she gets sad, and they're like, oh, you need to tell us why. And she apologizes to the party because she wants to save her lover. That's the whole thing. Yeah, it's just, oh, I'm so sorry. The real reason why I wanted to save the world is because I just love him so much. And they're like, oh, we understand. You're actually good for loving someone and wanting to save the world. And it's so simplistic and so dumb, and just this ending it's insulting almost, I'd say. I don't recommend getting this ending. If you want to do the dungeon and get the items and stuff, yeah, just do that, and just leave it at that. Don't get this ending. It's so much worse than the original. It's, oh my god, like, I don't know how you can arrive at this ending after everything else in this game. And I need to make sure I don't miss any stuff. So I guess I should get to that true ending part of the game. So they go to the most destroyed place in the world, and 2 years later there's grass growing and everything's nice, basically. And not only that, while exploring and restoring the Red Chronicle using the artifacts, Stock finds a seed, and so he goes to the Imperial ruins, and they have all this grass in it and stuff, and he plants the seed. And this seed of possibility... Okay, so this is something I forgot to mention. Okay, so at the very end, Nemesia quote-unquote sacrifices herself, except she doesn't really. She uses her power to send all of Stock's friends back to their own world, basically. And Heist just, he just does himself. Heist is really bad in this, I should say. he just becomes like this dumb anti-hero character where he used to have so much more nuance, and now he's like, heh, nothing personnel, I'll use my Black Chronicle to do whatever I want. And it's just really dumb. But anyways, so Heist just uses the Black Chronicle to get himself free, but she uses her Red Chronicle to get everyone else out, and the implication is that she just wants to let herself die now that her lover is dead, and she just wants to let it all end because it's been such a long time, and she just wants to she wants it to be over. And so she teleports Stalk away, but then at the ending of the ending, he used this seed to get to where she was and freeze her, except there's nothing that really indicates that there's a reason why she couldn't have done that already. But she seems to like she treats it like that, and she's like, "Oh, thank you. I thought there's no way you can get back now. Oh no!" But it's like, "No, I can." And then it turns out her lover's also alive, and I'm like, "Oh, we should go back to and so you can see the beautiful new world we created." And then I don't know if this is the exact quote, but Nessia says like, "Next stop, the future," or something like that, and that's how the new version of the game ends. And without the new version of the game directly in front of me, I can't recall enough to give specifics on this. Oh yeah, another cool thing about the combat system, they have like formations and stuff. There's all kinds of cool stuff. Like you can set traps on certain squares and stuff, and the combat system gets so good. But that's all well and good. The game's great no matter what version you play. I'll probably have an easier time finding the 3DS version, and it does have a lot of good quality of life improvements and stuff. But man, this ending, I'm missing stuff, I know for sure, because there's other stuff, there's more specifics that I could talk about, but I'd have to look them up directly. But this ending is just the worst. I feel like it's indicative of Atlus though. This is where they're at now. They've gotten superficial, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's at this, like, I don't have any hopes for the new Catherine girl. It's probably gonna suck. Just because. That's just the nature of it. I don't know if it's that they have worse writers, or if the writers are lazier or more superficial or what. But it's just kind of the direction things are going. 'Cause like Persona 5, I liked it, but it's very basic. Like it's got some very like grade school stuff in terms of morality, and I kind of see that leaking into Radiant Historia because the ending is so much worse written. It understands the game so much less. Like it's just a very superficial kid. Like, oh, let's just make everything happier, and we'll add this new girl, and she's the strongest, best, most powerful character, and everyone loves her, and she's from an ancient race, and she's actually at the root of all the desertification, and but she has a tragic flaw because she wants to save the person she loves. Like, it's just bad. But yeah, that's about it. Radiant Historia is still a very great game. Like, as far as I'm concerned, this is the kind of game that can be mentioned in the same breath as classics like Chrono Trigger and stuff like that. And either version's fine to play, honestly. Both have the main story intact. There's some translation changes in the 3DS version, but it's nothing major. I'd say that the DS version is slightly better written, but there's no going wrong with either one. It's just the new ending really sucks. But either way, you're getting a really well-written game with a great story, a phenomenal ending, and a lot of the stuff in Perfect Chronology is good. The voice acting is very strong. The new content, quality of life changes, they're overall pretty good. There's some DLC storylines I haven't tried. I don't know if that's any good. It actually might be a good test to see if those are well written, because the thing is, like, the possible histories are also new stuff. That's new content, and there is actually quite a bit. So like, it does add a lot in that regard. But there's also a new dungeon that's actually kind of disappointing. It's tiny. There's no end to it. It's just there's 6 floors basically, and you fight enemies from the main game in it, but you get different items that let you trade for really powerful items, like armor that raises your special gauge and stuff like that. But yeah, like the new content isn't amazing by any means. Like the possible histories are usually interesting. Some of them are like really fanficky and bad, but it's just optional stuff, so it doesn't really matter. And there's some interesting like uses of the time travel mechanics in those possible histories too. But yeah, it's not like the game's ruined by this. It's just such a shame to have this ending overwrite the vastly superior ending from the original. Like, right down to the fact that it happens just before the ending. It literally interrupts the original ending to say, oh no, let's have this happier ending. Let's team up with this morally horrible person and just gloss over the fact that he did all this terrible stuff and no one even touches on it, and we'll just make him we'll just do this dumb thing. Because they've done this a lot with other Persona stuff too. They have you from Persona 4 team up with the killer from the game in the spin-offs. So they do dumb stuff like this a lot. But it's just such a shame to see it done to Radiant Historia because it's such a good game. Like, I really can't, even though I've spoiled a lot of stuff now, I've intentionally left it kind of vague on the details because even knowing what's coming, the game is just good. I've just been sitting on this combat system for a bit now, but the fights are so strong. There's so much interesting stuff with the gameplay. And then the story is so strong too. And that's basically all you need from an RPG. That and great music, and it's Yoko Shimomura, so it's amazing music. There's not that many tracks, but it's all good. So, yeah, even though I've spoiled a lot, and you really shouldn't have kept watching if you didn't want to be spoiled, but even knowing what's coming, the game is so good. So, I guess that's the moral at the end of this. New ending sucks, game is still great. Try it, buy it if you haven't. It's kind of an unknown game, but it's real good.